Can you believe it? He didn't even work there. He never signed in, never uttered a single word. Yet every single morning, when the military museum swung open its doors, there he was, already planted on that same bench beneath the SEAL operations display. Same spot, same tattered navy jacket clinging to his shoulders, same silent eyes boring into the glass like he could see ghosts dancing in there, ghosts the rest of us were too blind to notice. Was he lost in memory? Or was he guarding something no one else understood? Some visitors thought he was part of the staff. Can you imagine the irony? Others muttered he must be homeless, just looking for a warm corner. And then there were those who snickered, nudging each other with smug little grins, saying, "Look at him. Thinks he's Rambo or something." But he didn't flinch. Not once. Why? Because that uniform behind the glass wasn't just some relic he admired, it had once been his. Oh, the weight of that truth, can you feel it? Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories. Here, tales of courage and kindness slice through the shadows, lighting up the raw, beating heart of humanity. Doesn't that just grab you by the soul? Are you ready to plunge into what really happened that day? Trust me, this is a story that'll clutch your heart and refuse to let go, echoing in your mind long after the last whisper fades. The museum wasn't some fancy, towering shrine to glory. No, it was a humble converted hangar squatting near the edge of town, sandwiched between a rusty old airstrip and a diner so faded its menu hadn't budged since 1963. But step inside. Oh, that place breathed memory. The air was heavy, thick with the ghosts of 100 forgotten stories locked in glass and shadow. Exhibits lined the walls, old uniforms patched with time, rusted weapons that once roared, black and white photos of boys who never made it home. The volunteers running the show were mostly veterans, quiet men with soft voices and hands hardened by life, nodding more than they spoke, as if words couldn't carry the weight of what they'd seen. They'd grown used to the old man on the bench. They didn't know his name, he never gave it. And after a while, no one bothered to ask. He was just there, as steady as the flag by the entrance or the rifle bolted to the wall. Before the doors opened, he'd arrive. After they closed, he'd slip away like a shadow fading into dusk. He never touched a thing, no tours, no wandering, not even a glance at the plaques. He just sat beneath Exhibit 34, the SEAL display, a glass case cradling a preserved set of combat fatigues, a rusted combat knife, and a faded photo of SEALs in Vietnam. But here's the kicker, he never looked at the photo. Never. His eyes were glued to that knife, staring like it still knew the hands that wielded it. And maybe it did. Because the way he sat, shoulders squared, chin steady, boots lined up under the bench, was too perfect, too sharp, like a man trained to endure, not to be seen. Most people breezed past him without a second thought, but some paused. And a few? They laughed. One Saturday, a pack of teenagers stormed in, loud, reckless, all attitude. 3 boys in hoodies, one clutching a soda can, another filming some forgettable TikTok. "Hey, check it out," one hissed, jabbing a finger at the old man. "Think he's part of the exhibit?" Another snickered, more like part of the floor. They slunk closer, camera low, grinning like hyenas. "Sir," one drawled, voice dripping with mockery, "can you tell us about Vietnam?" "Nothing. Not a twitch." "Come on, man. Did you serve in World War I?" The other snorted, "Bet he's never even seen a gun." They cackled and strutted off, their laughter bouncing off the walls. The old man didn't blink, didn't budge, but his hands, resting so calmly on his knees, tightened just enough for someone sharp to catch it. No one did. Can you imagine enduring that? Day after day, mocked in a place meant to honor sacrifice. It was a Thursday morning, quiet and ordinary to anyone outside. The sun hung soft over the museum lot, the flag out front barely stirring. Inside, it was business as usual, visitors drifted in pairs, the docent shuffled pamphlets no one bothered with. And there he was, at the far end of the hall, on his bench beneath Exhibit 34, same jacket, same posture, same piercing gaze locked on that knife. He hadn't missed a day. No one knew what swirled in his mind, but by now, no one questioned his presence either. He was part of the museum's heartbeat, silent, still, almost holy. Earlier that week, 2 more teens had sauntered by, whispering jabs and posing next to him like he was a prop. "He thinks he's a war hero," one muttered, while the other stifled a laugh, fumbling for a video. A volunteer shooed them off, but the sting wasn't in their noise, it was in the silence that followed. He didn't react, never did. But that day, his fingers gripped the bench a little harder, his shoulders stiffened just a touch. Can you feel the ache of that? To be forgotten in a shrine to memory. But then, everything shifted. A young man stepped through the doors that Thursday, quiet, steady, his head high but not proud. He wore a navy hoodie with a Naval Special Warfare Training Center emblem, moving like he'd already learned that confidence and humility walk hand in hand. He lingered at each exhibit, soaking in details most ignored. When he hit the SEAL corridor, he stopped. Something shifted, not for the crowd, but for him. He studied the display, the uniform, the gear, the photo of 6 men in jungle fatigues. But then his eyes slid to the bench. There sat the old man, rigid as ever, staring ahead. And then, what was that? A tattoo peeked from under the old man's sleeve, faint, but bold, a serpent coiled around a trident, ready to strike. The recruit froze. He'd seen it before, on an instructor who spoke of it like a legend, a mark worn by one man first. And now, here he was. Carefully, the recruit stepped closer, hands clasped behind him. After a pause, he murmured, "Sir, was that your knife in the case?" Silence. The old man didn't budge. Softer now, the recruit tried again, "I recognize that tattoo, sir. My instructor, he said someone carried that mark before anyone else." No answer. But the air thickened, didn't it? The silence grew heavy with meaning. Slowly, the old man turned. His eyes locked onto the recruits, not angry, but searching. And then, he spoke. His voice rumbled, deep and weathered, I trained that boy before he ever saw a parachute." The recruit didn't grin, he just nodded, eyes wide, rooted to the spot. He didn't need more questions, he knew. He'd heard tales of a man who taught without fanfare, led without medals, vanished after Vietnam. They stood there, side by side, gazing into the case. What must that moment have felt like? To be seen, after all that time. The old man's gaze dropped to the knife, his weathered eyes lingering on the rusted blade as if it were a mirror to his soul. "They got the description wrong," he muttered, his voice a low rumble, thick with the ache of years gone by. "That one didn't come back with me. I carried it all the way through Dang, through the sweat-soaked jungles, the deafening gunfire, the moments I thought I'd never breathe again. Can you picture it? The weight of that knife in his trembling hands, a relic of a war he survived but never truly left behind." The recruit stayed still, his chest tight with a reverence he couldn't quite name. Then, from his pocket, he pulled a folded slip of paper, its edges frayed, as if it had been clutched through sleepless nights. It wasn't some glossy museum brochure or a sterile form, but a handwritten note, just a name, a number, and a small, embossed seal insignia at the bottom, glowing with quiet pride. With hands that shook ever so slightly, he placed it carefully on the bench beside the old man and said, "They're looking for instructors again. Quiet ones, ones who remember, heroes like you, sir." No ceremony, no fanfare, no swelling soundtrack, just one young soul cracking open a door to a forgotten legend. What must that moment have felt like for the old man, to be seen after so long? The old man stared at the paper but didn't touch it, his heart pounding beneath his stillness. Did he dare believe it? He watched the recruit walk away down the corridor, past the gleaming tanks, the tarnished metals, the yellowed newspaper clippings that whispered of a glory he'd buried deep. Only when the room fell silent again, achingly, hauntingly silent, did he reach out. His gnarled fingers hovered, then settled gently on the note, pressing it down as if to anchor himself. He held it there for a long, heavy while, long enough for the past to rise like a ghost from the glass cases around him, sitting beside him once more, whispering memories of valor and loss. Can you feel the weight of that touch, the flood of a life he'd thought was over? The old man didn't return the next day, nor the day after that. For the first time in months, maybe years, his usual spot on the bench sat empty, a hollow space that seemed to scream his absence. The volunteers noticed, their eyes darting to the bench with furrowed brows and unspoken questions. The custodian slowed his broom, casting a lingering glance as if the old man might appear from the shadows. But no one dared speak, out of reverence, perhaps, or fear of breaking the spell. The museum carried on as usual, its humdrum rhythm unbroken, yet something vital was missing. Visitors shuffled past the seal exhibit, blind to the void. The knife rested in its case, cold and mute. The uniform hung still, a shell of its former glory, and the ghost who once sat beneath it, the quiet, unshakable spirit, was gone. Where had he vanished to? What had that slip of paper stirred in his weary bones? Until Saturday. Shortly after noon, the museum's sleepy stillness shattered with the low growl of engines. Two black SUVs rolled up outside the front entrance, sleek and unassuming, no flashing lights, no blaring horns, just a quiet, undeniable presence that turned heads. They didn't clog the street or wave flags, they simply sat there, tinted windows hiding their purpose, radiating a calm intensity. The first to step out was the young SEAL recruit. Oh, how he transformed. This time, he wore his full-dress uniform, every crease sharp as a blade, every metal glinting like a star, his posture a testament to discipline and pride. Behind him emerged two officers in navy blues, their strides crisp, their faces carved with duty. One clutched a small folder, its edges worn but its secrets alive. The other scanned the room with hawk-like eyes, nodding to the museum director in a wordless exchange that crackled with meaning. Then, from the final SUV, the old man stepped out, his breath catching in his throat as his boots hit the ground. He wore the same faded jacket, the same scuffed boots, his posture silent as ever, but oh, something was different. Gone was the slump of a relic, now he moved like a soldier reborn, each step pulsing with a purpose he'd thought was lost forever. Didn't he look taller somehow, his shoulders broader with the weight of memory? The young recruit met him at the doors, his face alight with awe and anticipation. Without a word, he swung the doors wide and escorted the old man back into the corridor he'd once haunted like a shadow, every footfall ringing with destiny. The museum was a tomb, no visitors, no chatter, just an eerie hush. They'd cleared the area, as if the walls themselves knew something sacred was unfolding. Standing before the SEAL exhibit, the older officer with the folder stepped forward, his gaze locking onto the old man with a respect that bordered on worship. "Sir, I apologize for the intrusion," he said, his voice low but firm, steady as steel yet warm with honor. "My name is Commander Blake. I was told you once trained under Operation Phantom Echo, a name that echoes through history like a battle cry." The old man gave a slow nod, not puffed with pride, but raw and honest, a soldier's truth etched in his lined face. Blake's eyes gleamed as he pressed on. "Then you're not a visitor here, sir, you're the heartbeat of our foundation. We've scoured your field records, your debriefs, that handwritten field manual still guiding recruits at Coronado today." He opened the folder with reverence, turning it toward the old man like an offering. Inside lay treasures of the past, scanned documents brittle with age, a faded photo of a team in Vietnam, grim and determined, and there, unmistakable, a signature matching the name carved on the knife in the case. "We never meant to forget you," Blake said, his voice breaking just a hair. "We just didn't know where to find you, until now." Can you hear the regret in his words, the desperate need to right a wrong? The old man didn't glance at the papers, those ghosts didn't need his eyes. Instead, he fixed his gaze on the recruit, steady and searching. "You asked if I still train," he said, his gravelly voice softening, smoothed by time and something tender. "I don't." The recruit didn't waver, didn't blink, just nodded, stepping aside as Blake leaned in closer. "We're not asking for lectures or loud heroics, sir. We're begging for your presence, your eyes, your silence in the back of the room. These kids, they think toughness is all swagger and noise." Blake's voice dropped to a near whisper, urgent and raw. "But you, just by sitting there, you teach more than any of us could hollering from the rooftops." The old man's jaw held firm, but his eyes, oh, those eyes flickered with a spark, a buried ember flaring to life. His hand crept up to adjust his collar, a small tick of a man wrestling with his own worth. He glanced at the exhibit, where his younger self stared back, fierce in the uniform he'd worn through jungle mud and ash. "Keep the knife," he murmured, so quiet it was almost lost to the air. "But I want my bench back." The officers shared a look, quick, sharp, unanimous, then nodded as one. The recruit cracked a half-smile, a glint of triumph in his eyes, and for the first time, the man known only as the old guy in the museum took a step, not fleeing the past, but charging headlong into it. What courage must it have taken to reclaim that place, to let himself be needed again? 3 weeks later, the bench was no longer empty. Oh no, it had found a new home. Not in the museum's sterile halls, but in a private training facility buried deep inside a SEAL compound, a hidden sanctum few even dreamed existed. No signs, no open doors, no gaudy plaques, just steel walls, gritty sand, and a silence that thrummed with power. The old man sat in the back of the room alone, hands resting gently on his knees, his eyes sharp and alive, fixed not on a glass case now, but on a group of young candidates dragging a stretcher across a field of gravel, their grunts and gasps filling the air. He didn't speak. He didn't bark orders. He just watched, and somehow, miraculously, they moved better, stronger, because of it. He bore no rank, no shiny badges, no barked commands. Yet when he entered the room, the instructors stood, not by order, but by instinct, drawn upright by the quiet force of him. When he passed by the recruits, they didn't pester him with questions. They just nodded, parted like the sea, clearing his path with a reverence they couldn't explain. Those in the know already understood. The rest? They'd learn soon enough. His presence wasn't loud or showy, no fanfare, no nameplate pinned to his chest. But in every hushed moment, between the sweat-soaked drills, the aching stretches, the dimming lights before sleep, you'd catch the new generation stealing glances his way, not for praise, but to feel the weight of his watchfulness. Can you imagine the strength in that stillness, the lessons carved in every line of his face? Back at the museum, the SEAL exhibit stood unchanged, a time capsule frozen in place. The knife gleamed in its case, unyielding. The photo, the uniform, the dusty plaque, all sat untouched, silent sentinels of a bygone era. But next to the bench where the old man once lingered, someone had placed a new inscription, etched in brass with a quiet dignity. It didn't say, "in memory of." It didn't list dates or deeds. It simply read, "Instructor Ghost. SEL." Nothing more was needed, nothing more could capture him. And as for the old man, he never once asked for thanks, never craved the spotlight. What he wanted, oh, what he burned for, was to ensure the next generation carried something deeper than pride, something older than war stories, something forged in the crucible of silence, tempered by time, and handed down without a name. And now, at last, he was that name. The story of the old veteran sitting silently in that museum hits me like a freight train, right in the chest. His quiet dignity, day after day, gazing at that knife like it's a window to every battle he's fought, every loss he's endured. That strength, raw and unshakable. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be felt, and it makes me ache with admiration. But then I see those teenagers, mocking him, laughing like his life's weight is some cheap punchline, and it sets my blood on fire. It's not just rude, it's a gut punch to every veteran who's ever been brushed off by a society too busy scrolling to care. We've got this throwaway culture where sacrifice is invisible unless it's trending, and that's a disgrace we should all feel burning in our throats. But oh, that recruit, the one who sees him? That's a spark of hope that makes my heart leap. Leaving that note, pulling the old man back into his purpose, not as some dusty exhibit but as a living legend. It's electric. It's proof we're not all blind, that some still know how to honor the quiet giants walking among us. I'm convinced we need more of this, more eyes wide open, more hearts screaming, I see you, and you matter. Because in this loud, shallow world, it's the silent ones, the veterans, who've paid the steepest price. My view. We've got to stop treating their lives like background noise and start living with the gratitude they damn well deserve. Anything less is a betrayal of what they've given us. This story was brought to you by Heartfelt Gratitude Stories. Some men don't flaunt their legacy on their chests, they carry it in silence, in scars, in the way they move through a room without demanding eyes on them. And sometimes, all it takes is one person, one wide-eyed recruit, one fleeting glance, to remind the world that legends don't fade away, they wait, patient and unyielding, to be remembered. Now, let us ask you, have you ever crossed paths with someone who seemed ordinary until their truth hit you like a thunderbolt? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe tales like this deserve to echo far and wide, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these memories blazing bright. Thank you for watching, we'll see you in the next story.